Hey guys, welcome back to another video in the How to Become a Better Runner series. We're going to be talking about one of my personal favorites today, and a lot of my friends are actually going to be shaking their heads at this one, but I'm going to be talking about base training. That's right, building your aerobic base, because that's the foundation to becoming a better runner. Alright guys, welcome back. So now I'm going to answer the question of when you should start building your base. And of course that all depends on when your race is and when you want to be in shape for. If you're training for a 5K in September, you got to give yourself time to train, but then before that build your base. When you're starting a training program, I say you should be doing 12 to 16 weeks of base training, maybe, 3 to 4 months. That's typically what I did when I was training. Before I considered even doing speed, I built that foundation first. I'm not saying I didn't do any sort of workouts, but I didn't do super fast speed workouts, I did a shorter tempo run, which of course I'll talk about in another video, and I also did some longer runs as well. It may seem like a lot of time, but when you're not spending enough time doing your base training and you get into your season or you get close to your race and that is when you want to start, it shortens your time allotted to training, which means you're going to have to do those speed workouts without that proper base training, which means that it's going to increase your risk of injury, it's going to decrease your recovery time, which means that you won't be able to do as much running, you won't be able to do as much training, and you might get injured. And if you get injured, you don't really have time to recover because you're giving yourself such a short amount of time. But if you give yourself that 12 to 16 weeks, it gives you that time to slowly build yourself up to up here, and then when your actual training block starts, you can actually decrease the mileage when you start throwing in some speed workouts. One thing I have to stress about base training is consistency. I see a lot of new runners, they'll run 30 kilometers one week, 10 kilometers another, 15 the next, 5 the next, 25 the next. You have to be consistent about building. You want to go 16, 18, 21, 24, 28. Maybe have a down week where you do less mileage because you don't want to keep building. You have to give yourself those off weeks. But essentially, you want to be consistent with your growth. Go up, have a down week, go up, have a down week, go up. And that way, you're not losing a lot of what you built upon in prior weeks by suddenly doing a lot less for the next 2, 3, 4 weeks. And then you have to try to build back up again. So consistency, that is key. So one of the big questions you have is, how fast should I be running? And I like to say that you should be running at a conversational pace, which I know is different for everybody and it's not the greatest metric, but at the same time is a good indicator of if you're running too fast. Another way to gauge your pace is, of course, maybe getting yourself one of these as a watch, or even have your phone with you with one of those apps that tell you your pace and whatnot. Pacing is what I use specifically to judge how fast I'm training. I know it's different. One day you might be sore, so you shouldn't be going fast. You eventually learn to read your body, but by going by pace, okay, if I'm training for a 5K in 30 minutes, so a 6-minute pace, your easy run should be, maybe even 7.5 minutes per kilometer. But there are great pacing calculators out there on the internet. You put in your target time and it actually tells you what pace you should be doing your easy runs or even tempo runs or even workouts. And they're not always completely accurate, but they're great indicators to know what you perhaps should be at. So I'll actually put down in the description below the calculator that I use to base my pace. Maybe it'll help you guys too. Alright, so now we're getting into the fun stuff and actually learning how to build your base. And of course, you want to start small. I would never ask someone to go and run 50 kilometers in their very first week, ever. So if you're absolutely brand new, the first thing that I would recommend is maybe just walking. Walk long distances. If you're training for a 5K and your goal time, let's say, is 50 minutes, walk for an hour. Train your body to walk for an hour. I know it might be a lot of walking and might seem very time consuming, but if you can't walk for an hour, how are you supposed to run for 50 minutes? So that is where I would start, is just walk. So eventually, as you're walking, you can start sprinkling in some running intervals. Intervals are a great way to get started. You may start with walking for 5 minutes and run for 1 minute. Then eventually you get up to walking for 5 minutes and run for 2 minutes, and doing that all the way up to 50 to an hour. So you're trying to train your body to be able to run the full distance of an hour. That is your goal if you're training for a 5K in 50 minutes. If you're not a complete beginner and you know that you could run for a couple kilometers at least, I would start with intervals that are longer. Maybe run a kilometer, then walk, then run a kilometer. Maybe start your first day, maybe try 3 kilometers, where you're running for a kilometer, then walking, running for a kilometer, then walking. How much you walk in between is up to you. Depends if you're huffing and puffing, and depends if your body is tired and trying to catch up. Give yourself longer breaks. You want to give your body a break so that you could recover, so that you're not sacrificing your form, so that you're able to finish your workout. That's the important thing, is finishing your workout. And once you've got to the point where you could do a 5-kilometer run straight, that's great. If you want to run a 5-kilometer race at a good pace and become a better runner and improve your time, you're going to have to be able to run longer than 5 kilometers. So of course you don't have to do that at the start, and that's where base training comes in, but that's what we're working up towards. Maybe even doing 7 or 8 kilometers, or even if you're ambitious, doing 10-kilometer runs. I'll take you into what I suggest to my friends when they're starting their programs, which is, of course, utilize your days off. You're not at the point where you can run every day. Take your days off. Days off are super important, especially in the early running of your training. I personally don't take many days off, but I've already done that base training. When I started back in January, I took 2 days off at least per week. I was running 50 kilometers, but I didn't just start in January either. I was running in December, and I was even running in November, so I was already starting to work on my base. And I was doing 20 to 30 kilometers in December. And then when I got to my actual beginning of my training cycle, I was still working on my base, but I was able to do 50 kilometers in a week. Now I'm able to run more often. So I recommend what you do is you run 3 to 4 times a week in the beginning. Now you don't have to do 5 kilometers every time. You might want to start with, let's say, 15 kilometers in a week. So, you might do 2 of those might be 5 kilometers, but then you might do a 3 and a 2, or you might do 4 4s and do 16 kilometers in a week. That's completely up to you. Where you start is up to you based on how your body feels. If you're extremely sore the next day after a run, take a day off. You don't want to be extremely sore. That's how you get injured. But if you do a run and the next day you actually feel great, you're not super sore, you jog a little bit in your house and your legs aren't that sore, maybe you could run again, maybe not. Judge what you do in the beginning based on your body. Now, in terms of how much you should increase per week, again, is all relative to your own body. However, there is a good suggestion saying don't increase more than 10% of your mileage. So early on, you're not necessarily going to be using that. If you only run 2 kilometers in a week, that means the next week you can only run 2.2. It doesn't really make sense. But when you get to the higher mileage, it starts making a little bit of sense. If you're running 50 kilometers, 10% is 5 kilometers. So the next week you do 55. But if you jump up to 60 and go 20% more, that's putting a lot of stress on your body. I personally like to go with don't increase your mileage by more than 5 kilometers in a week, but that's just me. So if I scroll through my entire training, at no point did I increase by more than 5 kilometers in a week, except recently, I think I went up 13, but that's only because I'm recovering from an injury and it's not necessarily building my base because my body's already able to sustain 140 kilometers as opposed to the 100 that I did last week. So yeah, going based on, let's say you're doing the 16 kilometers, 4 runs times 4 kilometers. You might be walking in between 2 of them, but let's just say 16 kilometers. Your next one, I would do maybe 19 to 20 tops. I'm not saying you have to go up 3 to 4. I'm saying don't exceed 20 kilometers your following week. You know, maybe even you want to do 18 if you, like I said, it depends on your body. So when building your aerobic base, there's actually a workout that's incorporated in it, and that I'm going to talk about it more next week, but I have to mention it this week because it's very important to building your aerobic base. And of course, that is the long run. Doing one long run per week, even one long run every 2 weeks or 3 weeks when you first start, is very great at improving your base, is very great at becoming a better runner in the future. Again, I'm going to talk about that more in depth next week. So if you want to see that, make sure you subscribe to the channel, maybe even like this video, and comment down below on what else you want to see me do. Even in your base stage, you could also add a little bit of a tempo run in. I'm not saying do a 10 kilometer or 6 mile tempo. I'm talking about doing maybe a 3-4 kilometer tempo, or even less, a 2 kilometer, 3 kilometer tempo, just to start training your body to do those bigger speeds, so that way when you actually start your training cycle and you're doing workouts, your body's going to be used to running at a little bit of intensity. So tempo runs I'm going to be talking about in a couple weeks after the long run, but I just wanted to state it here. But I wanted to mention that base training is not just easy miles. There's a few other workouts that you can sprinkle in there as well. So also in the base training, some people might include some drills like strides and stuff, which again, I'll talk about way down the road. You're not there yet. So right now, what you should be focusing on is just building your aerobic base, doing those easy miles, and working from here and slowly build that up. That's what you're trying to do right now. So I'm going to tell you a bit of my story of how aerobic base training really helped me get faster. So 2 years ago, my PB, as I mentioned in my introductory video, in the 10 kilometer run was 40 minutes and 40 seconds. No matter what I did, I couldn't get that faster. I don't think I was training enough, essentially. However, last year, during my base stage, I got to the point where I was running longer distances than I had ever run. I also incorporated a long run into my run, and I was doing a little bit of a tempo run as well. Once I improved my tempo run to a 10K, my tempo run was actually faster than my PB. That's right, which is sad, I know, but it's true. So that just proves that base training, even though I wasn't doing any speed workout at all, just the base training, the long run and the tempo run sprinkled in there, got me to the point where I was actually running faster than I had ever run before. So hopefully this video helped you understand a little bit about base training and how important it is. And I hope that you guys take this into consideration when you're starting your training program and you want to start running. Do your due diligence, do the base training, even though it seems, strenuous on the mind because you're running at such an easy pace and you want to run faster, but please just consider this. So please guys, if you like this video, hit the subscribe button, smash that like, and throw a comment down below letting me know if this video is helpful or if there's anything else you want me to talk about in the future. Next week, of course, I'm going to have my training video that I'm going to throw up, but also I'm going to throw up the how to become a better runner, the long run. So stay tuned for that, as it's the next thing that you guys are going to be working on after you build that base. Peace.